Now is it on? There we go. Hey guys, my name is Howard Everett. I am a happy transplant to Tennessee from Texas. And I tell all my friends in Texas they should move up here because it's got all the great things about Texas, but the cops here are nice. And I work for a ministry called City Church Network. If you look on the website, it says I'm the director of fishing and farming, which basically means I like lost people more than Christians usually. And I spend a lot of my time going after lost people, and then once they get saved, I turn them over to guys like Brad and let him do all the hard work, shepherding, disciple making. I try to avoid all that stuff, but I really do love the missionary part of our calling as Christians. And my real job is I help people start new churches. And so for long periods of time, I've mostly just been involved with brand new churches, which of course can be kind of exhausting in a lot of ways, right? And so I met Brad through Isaac and Taylor, and then a couple of my buddies started coming here, and started hanging out with Scott a little bit, and then Brad took me out for a cup of coffee, and he was willing to pay for it, so I was like, I'm in. I like this guy. Amen. And so, I just started coming here really just to check it out, and then one thing led to another. It's been over a year now, and I asked Brad a few weeks ago, how do I become a member of this church? So pretty exciting for me to be a member of a church that's older than a year. It's been a while, and so really exciting for me. And I love the discipleship aspect here, and I like the preaching quite a bit. I think my favorite part of this church is just the charity. This church is not really big numerically, but it's ginormous heart. And just the stuff that we've been able to do in the last year since I've been here myself has been really kind of cool to watch. So I don't know about you, but I wasn't born a Christian. I was actually born in opposition to the whole idea of the gospel. As a matter of fact, when I first started hearing the gospel presented to me, when people started acting like a missionary towards me, I kind of mocked you people. I was like, what? You don't actually believe this, do you? And there were times where I would be angry with people, not because the gospel offended me so much, but because it just sounded so dumb to me. Like, what a scandal. So what you're saying is, I do all this wrong stuff, and some other guy pays for it? That's ridiculous. Who would do that? I just couldn't get it through my head that it was real. And it just seemed, honestly, it seemed stupid to me. And then some circumstances came up, I'll get into that, where God made himself very, very plain and obvious to me. And then it felt to me at the time like he was giving me this choice, but I look back on it and I think there was more to it than that. So I was born in 1968 and grew up in a part of Houston. This is really funny. I literally had this all written out, and it literally just got erased somehow. Okay. Well, I remember most of the story. I was born in 1968 to hippies and vagabonds. When I went in the Army, I was 17. I had lived in 21 houses. I had committed more crimes than any non-mafia kid I ever met. I had dropped out of school because I started a little import-export business, if you know what I mean. And I asked my teacher once in 7th grade how much she made, and I was like, I make more than you. I just never went back to school. And, I thought I was cool, and I thought I was tough, and I probably wasn't very much of either. My older brother, who, when my stepdad got out of the picture, who used to kind of beat us up on the regular, my older brother decided that I still needed that program, and so from about the age of 8 to 12, he took over, and he was actually way more violent and abusive than my stepdad was. And then when he overdosed, it got to the point where I just couldn't take it anymore. And I kind of ratted him out just to protect myself from possibly getting killed. And in those days, if somebody went to rehab, it was usually for about 30 days for like an overdose. He wound up living there for 2 years. And during that 2 years, I was always so worried that he would come back and kill me, for real. I eventually told my mom and 5th or 6th stepdad that I was going to be gone soon, because if my brother Nick came back, I just didn't think I could take it. I thought he would kill me. And so my mom's sister, my Aunt Linda, had worked for a guy named T.A. Robinson who had donated some land out on the edge of Harris County, like north of Houston, for a boys' home, like a foster home, but on like a cattle ranch. And long story short, I wound up going out there for 1 year to kind of figure things out and escape the wrath of my crazy brother. I wound up living out there for 4 years. And about 6 months into it, I noticed two things that changed my life. The first was that my foster dad, who was really the first good Christian guy I'd ever met. I mean, ever. I couldn't believe he was real. After a while, I was like, this guy is real. And he was a big, tough, former Marine who had some muscles and could definitely put me in my place, even though I was a pretty big kid. I really respected him, and he was tough, but he was tender. But the thing that really impressed me about Fred was that when he would pray for things, especially as a farmer and a rancher, it just seemed like they would happen. It was almost empirical. It was almost like watching a science experiment. This old man would pray for something at the table, and 2 or 3 days later, we'd be out on the farm, and it would happen. And he once put his arm around me. He used to call me Senor. He'd be like, Senor, I want you to go into your closet, close the door. I want you to just say, God, I don't really believe in you, but if you're there and you love me, I'm open to some evidence. That sounded like Nixon, didn't it? Sorry. And I did that. I didn't know Jesus had said that, by the way. He stole that from the Bible. He plagiarized. And so I didn't know. So I went in my closet and I shut the door. I remember the Rush. Remember that old band Rush? I had a Rush poster on the inside of my door. And as it closed, the lights went off and I couldn't see anything. I went, okay, God, I don't believe in you. I don't think you really love me. And if you do, I'll take some proof. Something like that. A couple days later, the foster parents 2 doors down, the lady's name was Margaret O'Quinn, and the husband, Danny, was the boxing coach, and I was always really drawn to him. He was just a real man's man, and I really liked him and looked up to him. And Margaret waved me off the school bus one day, and I went in there, because you just do whatever these people say. The adults at this foster home were not to be trifled with. And she had baked me a plate of cookies this tall, and she made all of her kids, she had 12 foster kids, she made them all go into their rooms and told them to have a quiet time, which I didn't know what that meant. I'd been living at the home for about 6 months, and she said, I want to tell you 2 things, and this is how I got saved. I've been watching this old man's prayers get answered. I've been getting fed like a king. I've been learning how to work on a farm. I'd gotten back into school and caught up with my class. 7th grade, it wasn't that hard. And Margaret O'Quinn said, when you came here, they told me to come over and cut your hair because I had really long, greasy, hippie hair, which I loved. She said, I can't think of a single biblical reason we did that, and I saw how badly that hurt you, and I just want you to know I apologize. I had never in my life heard an adult apologize to a kid. What adults from my world do is they hit kids, push kids, use kids, take advantage of kids, molest kids. They don't apologize to kids. And her apology broke me. Because it was real. And she said, I made you these cookies. You don't have to share them with anyone. If you don't eat them all right now, you can take them home and I'll make sure your foster parents know these are all yours. So I wanted to have your attention. I was like, woman, you have my full attention. She poured me a glass of milk. She said, every night I go to bed, I get on my knees and I start to pray. And last night, I started to pray for you. So Danny works all day with the horses and teaches boxing after school. He was exhausted. Danny fell asleep right after we laid down. I got on my knees and started to pray. She said, I never fell asleep. I've been up all night. Just praying for you. She said, I'm so worried about you. What's going to happen when you die? Why can't you just believe that Jesus died on the cross for your sins? I said, I kind of want to now. But I can't because, intellectual pride. I don't want to be submitted under someone. I had all these really good answers. Even if it is true, I don't like Christians. You guys don't fool around. You don't get high. You don't fight. You don't do anything I like. There's nothing about your culture that appeals to me personally, but thanks for the cookies, and I left. A couple of days later, she invited me to go to this coffee shop called The Vine in Spring, Texas, a suburb of Houston. And she tricked me into it by offering to buy me a pizza. Now, kids, they didn't have pan pizzas back then. The smallest one on the menu was about that big. So I made sure I could get whatever I wanted. It was all mine, yes. So she bribes me with a pizza. That was the worm on the hook, right? She put that hook in the water, and she was fishing for men. And I went to hear this guy preach. His name was Joe Arms. And we were sitting on little squares of carpet on the floor in this raggedy coffee house that the Southern Baptist Convention paid for out of their home mission board fund because someone said, we need a place to reach out to hippies and and skaters and greasy-haired kids who won't ever come into our church. And Joe described Jesus that was not limp and bent over and hanging from a cross. He described a Jesus that was resurrected and alive. And here was the thing that really got my attention. He said, if Jesus came in here today, boys and girls, you would think that he was really cool. I remember going, no, not cool. And he spent about 20 minutes talking about just how cool Jesus is. I prayed and trusted that the gospel was for me. I woke up the next day and, my circumstances hadn't changed at all, but my response to them started to change. And I stopped wanting to set fire to everything. And over time, I got off of drugs totally. That did not happen overnight, by the way. I was sure I was saved, but it took a while for the sobriety to catch up to the salvation testimony. And even longer to stop fighting. I was 13 when I got saved. I was 19 before I stopped just punching guys whenever they made me mad. It took a while. Because all that stuff that had been beaten into us, right? It doesn't just come out. Jesus didn't just squeeze it all out on day one, but over time, he just kept bringing good men and good women and good friends into my life and introduced me to discipleship and the missions. And I just want to encourage you that if you have never yielded, if you've never turned your heart away from the world and your family of origin and all the things that are part of your past, if you've never fully repented and just said, you know what, I think Jesus would make a better king than myself. See, the devil doesn't come to you and say, I want to be your king. The devil comes to you and says, you can be your own king. And if you're willing to just step off of that throne and turn your heart towards Jesus, listen, it won't necessarily change all your circumstances, but you'll notice your response to things begin to change. So I don't know who this encouraged or hopefully didn't damage anyone, but I want to just pray for this church and just say how glad I am that I get to be a part of this. When I'm not here, it's because I'm traveling doing my job. So, Lord, thanks so much for the fact that you are the way and the truth and the life, and the only way by which man can be saved. And we're just really grateful for an opportunity to hear from your word and to worship you. And just pray that if someone here has not yet bent their knee and humbled themselves before you, that today would be the day that you would be their king forever, and they would proclaim it to everyone they meet. In Jesus' name.